Yo, what up, everyone? It's Paul. Welcome to the Portal Room, co-hosting again. We got Christian, and tonight we're going to be talking about the state of ufology, a little bit about Skywatcher, and a couple of other things here. Tonight, luckily, we got an awesome dude that we love that's joining us again for the stream for the second time. He's bringing in some notes, some cool stuff to talk about tonight. So once again, let's welcome Dr. Mounts from All Things Unexplained. What's
All
going on,
right.
man?
Hey, Paul. Hey, Christian. How's
Woohoo.
it going? Thanks so much for having me back for an
Hey, brother.
encore. I really appreciate it.
Excited, dude. Let's get into it. So let's kind of give I guess you can say a brief outline on our perspectives on the state of ufology, and then we can maybe maneuver that into some of the Skywatcher stuff, which in a lot of ways correlates to the topic, right? So in my opinion, some would say that it is stagnant in a lot of ways because of the repetition, different groups putting out evidence, but of what people call not good enough evidence, which would be the blurry videos and stuff, but they are videos. And then the other side is just full on believer mode and yada yada. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. Christian, what do you think? And we'll go to Dr. Mounts here.
Yeah, well, what do you call it? The state of ufology. Um, I don't know. I feel like there isn't nothing much has really, you know, hasn't changed much, right? A lot of the video evidence that we're seeing, I feel like we've seen a lot of it already just from private citizens, like almost we've seen a lot of this stuff, right? What do you call it? There isn't much new on the lore front except for uh I'd say like, a few government whistleblowers, which is, it's wonderful, but we're you know, still not in any, I feel like any new kind of territory at the moment. I'd say the biggest thing for me personally is kind of what All Things has brought to the table recently with the UFOs and the pyramids. I think that's a very big, like that's a big thing. I think that that is something that needs to be looked at. So that's the most exciting thing for me in ufology at the moment, as far as and the state of things are concerned. But not much movement, of course, per usual.
I like that. That's a good take. Yeah, and I was gonna say that that's been one of my favorite things that we've discussed last time Dr. Mounts was here. So that was really cool. What about you, Dr. Mounts? What's your position on the state of ufology? And then let's incorporate that into some of the Skywatcher stuff if you want. We can do that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I noticed, and I was telling Christian about this before we came on there. I happened to notice right before we came on the air that there is some more breaking new UFO news tonight that I only just noticed, and it seems to be as a result of the Skywatcher situation, right? The Skywatcher show last night, the enigmatic group that we know Jake Barber's a part of, and they had some new video and photos and an entire new classification, as it turns out. Last night, and I live streamed that and took some notes and talked about it with a lot of different people last night, including UFO busters and my friends from Australia. But I think that one thing it seems to have done is it seems to have put some pressures on some of these other UFO personalities. So, breaking tonight, Jeremy Corbell has released some new videos himself. So, 4 new Tic Tac videos. These came from 2023, and I have not watched them yet. I've got them pulled up. If Would y'all like to see them and see what we've got here?
Yeah, definitely. Let's check them out.
All right, let me see. Here we go. And you may have to pull that up, I think, Paul. I've got my screen shared. So it just says Dr. Mouse on the bottom of the tab. Okay. So this is on Jeremy Corbell's Twitter. This post was made this afternoon. Okay. It says, In 2023, the U.S. Navy encountered 4 tic-tac-shaped UAPs off the coast of California. Personnel from the USS Jackson and the CIC, which is the Combat Information Center, filmed them. One of the vehicles of unknown origin was observed exiting the water, transitioning directly into flight, demonstrating transmedium capability. That's one of my pet peeves with all this stuff going on, is all the stuff we hear about is demonstrating anomalous capabilities. And this did happen with the Skywatcher film last night. They talked about it, but we didn't see any of this evidence of anomalous capability. At any rate, no flight control surfaces or conventional propulsion signatures, heat plumes, or exhaust were detected. The UAPs executed and observed instantaneous, synchronized departure. Okay, interesting. Operator purpose, capability, origin, intent are unknown. The craft remain unidentified. And he's got the time, the vessel, which is the Jackson, the imaging platform. Interestingly, y'all know a lot of times this is what's classified about these materials. And somebody put it to me like this one time. For example, if a fighter jet took a video of the Statue of Liberty, that video would be classified, not because of the subject matter, the Statue of Liberty, but because of the platform that recorded the video. So a lot of times this is the things we have to work around. And 4 Tic Tacs, let's just see what it's got. I have not watched this, and it's got some sound, apparently. Well, there's one.
You call it the VVSS team. Yeah, like 22,000 feet.
That shit took off earlier.
Oh, it's still the same video.
Wouldn't surprise you, tell you. You call it the VVSS team. Yeah, like 22,000 feet.
Wow,
Yeah.
that was interesting.
Looks like it was kind of going side to side. I think I watched part of that episode earlier. I'm not sure how much of that has to do with the camera moving as well. It might have been stationary, if I'm not mistaken, from what they were saying. I could be wrong though. But it's still interesting. I mean, yeah, the whole platform thing. I mean, that goes into why a lot of the videos, right, are classified, because if the adversaries see that platform, they're going to know, oh, they're using this tech and use it to their advantage. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I don't know what to think about it. Yeah, I don't really have any formed opinions. What do you think about it though, Dr. Mounts? What's your opinion?
Well, and this goes back to how I see the state of ufology trending. It's trending toward in my opinion, a very sensational media path, right? Like Diana Pasulka writes a book called American Cosmic. It's about to be a television show by the Game of Thrones producers. Okay, Chris Bledsoe writes a book. It's about to be a movie. That's my understanding. UFO of God. All right. Jeremy Corbell, we know he's big on the podcast side of things. He's got his own show, Weaponized. We've got Skinwalker Ranch, which I'm a big fan of Skinwalker Ranch and all the work they're doing out there. But I watched that last night, y'all, and that was a high budget, well funded media production. It had a lot of Skinwalker Ranch vibes to it. I don't know if y'all picked up on that. a lot of Skinwalker Ranch vibes to it in its production value, the sensationalism of it all. And so that's just kind of the way I see it trended. I mean, it seems to be big business. It seems to be a winning formula. Um, and sure enough, here we are now. We're all waiting on episode 3, right? Where they're going to get into psionics. And they made a lot of bold claims. They didn't back up any of the bold claims. So I guess we're all just going to have to sit back and wait and see what happens.
Yeah, I agree with the quality and kind of what you're saying about the UFO tainment is what people call it, right? But I don't know. It's interesting that they put everything in classes, right? I think that it's good to organize and kind of utilize that organization to collect data. But there's a lot of open questions, in my opinion, like the actual what would be the word? Like the actual data, like people can go back and look at like the metadata, like metadata, like, okay, how high up was this? What did the air traffic look like? Be maybe a little more transparent about the location. I think they had said in a they were talking about it somewhere. I don't know if it was a podcast where I heard it or something, but that they were going to do this in Texas. I'm not sure if it was still in California or Texas. Are you aware of where they did that or anything like that?
Well, they seem to have matched up last night's episode to Texas. And I believe Mick West or somebody Mick West knew matched it up. I don't think they said that's where they were. And it actually made me wonder. I'm not going to call any names, but there are people in the UFO Twitter community, skeptics, I'd say, that were seemingly invited out to participate in some of this stuff with them, and they did not go. They declined. At the time, I kind of jokingly gave some of them a hard time, like, "Look, yo, if you get invited out to Palmdale, my co-host CJ from All Things Unexplained, she's from Palmdale. Palmdale's what we like to say their second most famous resident after CJ is Afro Man, who wrote a song called Palmdale. And look, you should have just said one of my requirements for my participation in this Skywatcher event is Afro Man has to be there too. Okay. And we're going to have a good time and we're going to watch the sky and we're going to sing Palmdale and we're all going to watch his video about the FBI breaking into his house and staring at his mom's pound cake, which is just hilarious if you've never seen that video. And that would have been my requirements. I'm like, okay, you didn't go? Like, what's up with that? But now I wonder, after I found out that last night's episode was in Texas, I wonder if they didn't pull sort of a fast one here, if maybe they fed some false locations to some people to maybe see if they could trust them or not. And then poof, next thing you know, one of those false locations got leaked out. And yeah, so they maybe they caught a naughty canary leaking some information that wasn't necessarily true.
Yeah, I mean, you can thank UFO people for being very adamant about doing their doxing research. That's all I'll say there, Christian.
Yeah, I think it would be a smart tactic, right? You know what I mean? I think that would be a good tactic. I think that that's how a lot of this information works too. You know what I mean? With even like people who do hold privileged positions, and I think that this is a way that whistleblowers like David Grush and other people who are unnamed can become compromised in this scenario, in these types of scenarios. It's not like an uncommon practice, I don't think, for that to occur. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. I personally heard that they were somewhere near some sort of like test range, you know what I mean? And that the test range could be, where they're like actually testing classified technology. but I don't know, right? Like, who knows? Or they know, we don't. That's kind of the problem, though, I think, with a lot of this, isn't it? Is that they know, we don't. But, there's a million and one things that go into this, like national security. Like, if this stuff is actually dangerous and it, gets into the hands of the wrong individuals, then, very well could be a problem. So there's a million and one different things to consider with this. That's kind of my take on that.
And
I
Paul, I
agree.
actually
Yeah, go ahead.
made a little Skywatcher trivia competition for you and Christian.
Let's go.
Winner gets all things unexplained hoodie. What do you say?
Oh, snap. All right, let's go.
All right. It's just 5 questions, and the people in the chat can help them out. People in the chat, help out Paul and Christian. This is, I'll do my best Family Feud impersonation. So you see it down there, Paul, Skywatcher trivia. Arden said, nice, let's go. By the way, Arden made me laugh because only Arden, only a Canadian would know Afro Man's most famous song of all. That she wants somebody on this panel to sing because I got high. But I actually thought of some cool new verses for this song. So I'm like, I was gonna go to C5 last night, but I got high.
Somebody's got to do an
Listen.
AI version of that.
Oh, man. All right, Arden. That was good. All right, so here we go. Skywatcher survey showdown. Paul versus Christian. And I think we should let Paul go first because Paul is the host here. So, all right, Paul, we surveyed. Oh, well, first you get to take turns, and I will loosely keep score at best. But we surveyed 100 people, Paul, and asked them to name your favorite Skywatcher classification of UFO. Act like you hit the buzzer, Paul. What's your answer?
Okay. Let me take a look. Let me think about this one. All right. So the jellyfish, I'm assuming, probably.
Good answer. Good answer. Christian, what are you going to say here?
Well, okay, so you said that we surveyed 100 people. Name your favorite Skywatcher classification. Well, if we're talking about like general consensus, then I'd probably say the triangle.
Good answer. Good answer. Let's see what the survey says. Boom. Number 1 answer, jellyfish. Paul nailed it. And according to my fake survey, Tic Tac was 2nd, Hornet was 3rd, Egg was 4th, and Tetra was 5th. So very good. Jellyfish was my favorite one by far. It was the most intriguing one. It's the one that had the most out there claims. I mean, it was pretty interesting. And now it made me wonder because now we got Jeremy Corbell.
They're aggressive.
Posting,
supposedly.
Oh, yeah. So get this, the jellyfish. Yeah, that's right. They're aggressive. I also made a little video, like a complete video on everything there is to know about the jellyfish. But yeah, they're aggressive. They evaded them at one time. They're probing us. They also don't want to, they want to avoid us, even though they're aggressive. I actually was confused by that. Maybe they're aggressive when they're approached, right? Otherwise, they avoid us. They also said that the jellyfish are not man-made. Okay. And by the way, they also said that they're pretty much a living organism because they said they're going to create a new taxonomy for these UFOs. Okay.
What if, just real quick, what if they actually are this jellyfish from maybe 100 million years into the future, and they're just coming back in time or something, swimming up there in the air? Who knows? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. Well, and they're working with that I don't want to spoil another question. I'll just leave it at that. But when they said that they're not even man-made, I mean, that's one of those cases where, okay, let's throw out some evidence here. They also said that they went after a jellyfish in a helicopter. Now you're telling me they got this big budget production. How I would like to see an episode 2 in was that here's the cliffhanger, right? The helicopter takes off, it's going after the jellyfish, has some mechanical problems. That's what they told us because it interferes with our technology, and then boom, cliffhanger to be continued. Okay, that next episode would have been the most talked about, must watch stuff ever, ever. That's not what we got. I digress. All right, Christian, you get to go first here. According to the Skywatcher group, which UFO class resembles a sea creature with trailing appendages?
Obviously, it's the triangle. No, I'm.
I don't know. There is another option here. Besides the
Um,
triangle, there's a couple of more options.
no, yeah, well, yeah, I have powers of deduction on this one. I'm going to probably say that it's the jellyfish, and I like Paul's answer about them coming back in time, and they're the ones that are trying to extinct the sea turtles today, right now. That's what's happening. That's why they're back.
That's
Protect the sea turtles,
exactly
guys.
it.
Protect the
Yep,
sea turtle.
I believe it. I'm gonna go with it's the Hornet, right? Where it's kind of similar to the jellyfish. I mean, I would say jellyfish, but I just want to, give a different answer. Yeah, it was the jellyfish. All
Jellyfish.
right.
But you know what? You know what they said? That the hornet, though, looks like the jellyfish, except it's carrying
Yeah.
something. So you definitely deserve partial credit for that. And also, let us not forget there was a manta ray category. And I'm pretty sure the manta ray has some sort of trailing appendage in real life, doesn't it? Am I imagining that? Is
So
that a
so
stingray?
the manta ray, you know what that makes me think of? Did you ever come across any of those old UFO comics? And there was a couple of sketches, right, related to Roswell. That thing kind of looked like a manta ray. Do you recall what I'm talking about? The ship?
Yeah, yeah. And then there was that movie recently where it was it was like a jellyfish manta ray kind of creature. Oh, Nope. That movie, Nope. Remember that movie? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Like the craft was a creature, like its mouth open. Okay, hold on. I have to show this though, real quick. All things. Let me just show this real quick because I want us to take a look at this. Okay, hold on. So this is supposedly the craft from Roswell. Hold on. Let me take down yours for 1 second. There you go. Doesn't that kind of look like that?
Oh, yeah, it does. Definitely.
That's crazy. Pretty
I mean,
wild
you may
looking.
be onto something there.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, that's what it made me think of right away. It's interesting. I mean, if that's the case, I mean, these sea creature looking entities have probably been swimming up there for hundreds of years or something. I don't know.
Well, I tell you what, I mean, I don't know what to think necessarily about their classifications, but I am fascinated by the shapes. We had a guest on All Things Unexplained, and she had written volumes on accounts. She considered herself a statistician, essentially, and she'd written volumes on accounts from all different states. So she wrote like UFO encounters in New York, UFO encounters in Alabama, and she compiled all this data, shapes, colors, size, etc., etc., etc. Right, and I've always been fascinated by the fact that whenever the Pentagon or DoD releases some documents for you, they always redact the shapes, and I couldn't help but wonder, wouldn't it be awkward or interesting? It'll be interesting if we found out that the classification system by Skywatcher is either the same names that they redact in these FOIA documents, or the same shapes, just different names, that would be interesting. I don't know
Well,
what it would mean, but it would be interesting.
well, you know what this makes me think of though too. What about the typical flying saucer? Like, what's the classification on that? I mean, we got to have something like that, even if it's from Lockheed Martin or something. I don't know.
We
I
didn't get
mean,
the saucer,
they
you're
did
right.
say they did say I think it was like a representative. I don't remember who it was, like a congressperson, but they said that there was a couple of classified UFOs and so forth. So maybe the saucer is one of them. Who knows, right?
We
Something to
also
consider.
didn't get the dumbbell, and I was confused on that because Ross Coulthart was recently talking about the dumbbell, and Jake Barber was on Ross Coulthart with the egg situation, so I had mistakenly conflated those two, the dumbbell and Skywatcher, but apparently the dumbbell UFO isn't coming from Skywatcher. And thanks, screen. The Arrow gave us Arrow.
Yeah, I
I
saw
remember
that.
that screen. Arrow
I
gave us
remember.
some shapes, but the interesting thing about Arrow may as well be somebody like Skywalker. They could just go off the reservation, and what we know that the Pentagon and the real UFO cabal pretty much either is disassociated from Arrow or just uses Arrow as some sort of talking head, to bemuse the public. And so, are those the actual shapes or not? It's anybody's guess. I would lean toward no, they're not. But Paul, back to you. And we've
Go
only
for
got a few of these. Which UFO
it.
classification has had previous military encounters and can achieve hypersonic speed levels?
Hmm. Hmm. Oh, okay. The Tic Tac, right?
Christian, you agree with that? Tic Tac.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you nailed it.
Yeah.
The Tic Tac, and the Tic Tac's one of those. Yeah, we got a lot of physics on the Tic Tac, including a tremendous paper by Knuth and two other physicists. And I recommend everybody check out that paper. It is you read that paper, and it's hard to argue that something anomalous wasn't going on in those Tic Tac encounters. And Christian, back to you. In the Skywatcher classification system, which class, we might have covered this already, is characterized by looking like a jellyfish carrying something?
Yeah, I think we did. It was the hornet's nest, right? One that you were talking about, I think,
Yeah,
right?
that's right. And that
Yeah.
is an interesting looking picture. That is one of their pictures here of the hornet. And I mean, it does kind of look biological.
Yeah, it does move as well. I remember seeing a clip of it. The bottom part seems to extend outward and downward. I can't say for sure, like obviously nobody can like really what it is, right? You know what I mean? A lot of people would argue that it could be like a balloon, or just anything, to be honest.
That's a good
Like
point.
there's stuff up there that's like actual old metal, that could just be like up
Space
there.
track.
Yeah, exactly, just trash, you know what I mean? But who knows? Like I can't say.
Well, and I
That
couldn't help but wonder, you know, Skywatcher mentioned several things when they talked about all these in terms of the description. And some of the things they said, I couldn't help but wonder if they threw them in there just, because like when they said things like not man made or wants to avoid us, that sort of thing. Because a lot of how they describe some of these UFOs aligns with how we would describe adversary technology, like a giant spy balloon. Okay. Which,
yes.
think about it, we had a gigantic freaking spy balloon cross the continental United States. We only ever knew about it because a dude just didn't give up on it. Like he's like, there's something up there. I'm going to keep making calls until somebody recognizes that I'm really seeing something up there that's bizarre. Okay. And we allowed it to cross over sensitive military sites. We allowed it to collect data For all we know, it was disrupting our technology at the same time as it was collecting data on our sensitive military sites. And we shot it down. And we still haven't seen photographs of this object. It's in our possession, y'all. It's in our possession. And we've seen no videos or photos of it. Okay. That should tell us something. I don't know what it should tell us, but it should tell us something. So, unfortunately for Skywalker Watcher, a lot of the things they said perfectly aligns with the possibility of advanced adversary technology. And y'all, I've been saying for quite a while, the drone situation, aliens and UFOs are the least scary thing that it could be. The least scary
Right.
explanation. The most scary is that it's humans. That's the most scary. We were told, I had a source tell me that China, for quite a while now, has been dropping drones from spy balloon like balloons at high altitude. And they've been dropping drones that are capable of hypersonic speeds from these balloons and high in elevation. And, if that is the case, then that would honestly could explain every one of the drone sightings. It explains where they're coming from, where they're going, why we can't track them, why they always seem to be near the coastline. All right. It explains a lot. So, anyway, moving on. Last
That's a
question.
good point, by the way. Just wanted to
What's
just
that?
make a quick comment. No, I'm just saying that's a good point, by the way. I mean, I like how we went straight into what Christian was saying about, well, how much of that is a balloon, a weather balloon, and then you kind of let us down. Well, this could be adversarial, right? Just like the spy balloon. So I really liked that breakdown because, again, that's kind of my opinion on some of the stuff in those videos, if I'm being totally honest. Um, and I don't want to sound like a debunker, but I leave open the idea that a couple of them might be balloons. I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to be level-headed about it, but also just maintain, I don't know, like a little bit of hope for the work that they're doing. I mean, they're actually boots on the ground, right? That's what matters. That is important work. But again, that metadata, I don't know. People are very people are very, very, what's the word? Logistical? Would that be the right word nowadays? I don't know. I mean, it's hard to, be in a drip disclosure phase and have things come out like this, right? On an, where it's like an episode a month, right? Like to me, that just, they already laid out a plan, like what you said, with all these movies and with this Skywatcher thing. The plan is, and this is a big responsibility, right? By the end of the year, we're gonna bring one down, right? So I don't know. It's just, it does feel like controlled drip disclosure. I don't know. What do we think though? Before we go to the last question, what do we think about that? About this controlled drip disclosure?
Go for it, Christian.
Well, I think it always boils down to personal perception. You know what I mean? That's how I see it. Like I believe that people like they could walk an alien out on the White House lawn and people would be like, that's not real. You know what I mean? They wouldn't believe it. Uh, what do you call it? It's a very personal thing. Even with like drip disclosure, you have to use your discernment. You know what I mean? It's in the end, you're the one it's your perception of it. Um, and it's like I think non-cred put it a really great way is that like we kind of have a consensus reality, but that's starting to break down, right? Like that's breaking down, it's fracturing, it's I mean the world's going in every direction imaginable. And I think like I can appreciate how like it's kind of like slowly trying to create a baseline. Like there's a baseline that's being created. Um, and it isn't just like, oh, coming in real hot with 1,000 different videos saying, look at this, look at this, look at that, look at this, and like, oh, this, that, and the other. It's not overwhelming. I can understand the reason for it, basically, is to not overwhelm the general public as far as that's concerned. So that's what I think about it.
Good point. True. Got to have both sides, right? What do you think, Dr. Mounts?
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I don't know. Is it evidence that, a lot of different people only have a tiny fragment of the truth? That could be it. Is it evidence that whatever the real truth is so terrible that those who have enough of it to release more than a tiny portion know that it's not in society's best interest? That could be it. But I have become convinced that there is a UFO cabal that is in tight control of the bulk of the information. And I think at this point in time, it's beyond our capabilities of knowing exactly why they maintain that control. But I'm sure power has something to do with it. Catastrophic disclosure, the chances of that happening has something to do with it. But I believe that there is a tiny group in power, and this was passed along to us, this notion from Bob Salas, who was at the Malmstrom nuclear base in Montana, right, when they had an incursion by some anomalous objects. And he is in full belief in that, and I've come to believe it as well, to be honest.
Oh, I gave away the last answer.
Well, so our last question, which UFO class shares the same name as a classic, and I love this movie, 58 sci-fi adventure horror movie? That's right.
Love that movie. Love that movie. Great movie.
Classic.
And I get them confused too, because there was it was one of the few examples where there was also a remake, and the remake was amazing as well. And I can't remember, because I think the original was black and white, and then maybe the remake was color. But one of them, I think it has Steve McQueen in it anyway, but the blob goes into a movie theater. Remember that scene? And it just like starts sucking everybody up.
Wild. So wild.
It explodes out of the movie
Yes.
theater. Just a classic.
That is a
Blob.
classic.
Well, that was just a little fun thing to
That was fun.
Distract from catastrophic disclosure.
Good point. Good point. Outside of the classification, though, kind of going back to the whole game plan, how confident are you in them bringing down a craft, or do you have any hope there? What do you guys think? Christian?
Oh, how should I answer this?
Carefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, very carefully. Yeah, exactly.
I think that we're going to see something. I do. It's a personal opinion that I have. And I'm going to say that it's up to every individual to make their own judgment on what they're seeing themselves. And that's my take on it.
That's bold. It's bold. I like it. What do you think, Dr. Mounts?
Well, first of all, Arden in the chat, and by the way, thank you so much for running the chat, Arden, and for being back here joining us tonight. It's great to see you as always. And she reminded me who won the hoodie. I almost forgot. You guys were such gracious competitors. I think you're both winners. I mean, I think you should just both get a hoodie. So we'll connect after the show.
That reminds me, I gotta rep my shirt real quick, but it's on the back, so I can't really.
You gotta flex.
Of it. Check it out, y'all. I got the All Things Unexplained shirt there. I don't know if you guys can see it. Yeah, I got it in the mail just the other day. super comfortable.
That's
Make
sick.
sure to grab one because what do you call it? All Things is doing some really great work for the UFO community, for everyone. And he's a genuine person. He's a good man, you know. So make sure you guys support him because he's doing a lot of great work for all of us.
Well,
I love it.
thanks. I appreciate that, and I have to laugh at Arden's comment. Thank you so much, Christian. Arden said, "Do we ship to Canada? We do. We do ship to Canada, but we're up to a 300% tariff on hoodies. So
Oh,
just
there you
be
go.
aware of that. Arden, but we can work out a deal for some maple syrup. I'm just saying. Arden already knows.
Fair is
Case of
fair.
maple syrup can go a long ways. You know, I got pancakes, and I can't put that processed stuff on the
Yeah.
pancakes. So
Don't put that
I need the
American
maple
syrup.
syrup. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And so what were you asking about there? Were they going to
Oh,
bring
yeah.
down a
So,
craft?
yes. What's your take on the fact that that's a possibility? And I liked Christian's answer. I mean, it's very bold. I don't know if I agree, but if that's a possibility, then I would say the same, to be honest. But what do you think?
Look, there's parts of the show I really liked. It's like everything, it had pros and cons. There were parts of the show I really liked. It was entertaining. I liked how they laid out the classification system. It was shocking. I I was shocked when they said taxonomy. I had to pause it and say, okay, I need to make sure what exactly is the definition of taxonomy. Are they saying what I think they're saying? And they were saying that they think some of these things are alive. I was shocked at some of the claims they made, like when they just said that the jellyfish is not man made, that it wants to avoid us, that it elevated to escape a helicopter. You know, when they said the manta ray is aggressive, which was interesting. Then when they said the jellyfish is working together with the tic tacs and the manta rays that are running cover for it. When they talked about the tic tacs and described how they're essentially the same size as what we learned from the previous military encounters, roughly 40-foot long. How they said the tic tacs, seem to interrupt their radar and jam them. Very Skinwalker Ranch light there when they were talking about signals and microwave signals. But they're not bringing down a craft. They might say
Okay.
they are.
Good take.
Now, they might say they did. Maybe that's a hot take, but I don't really think it's a hot take because if they brought down a UFO and revealed it, it's nothing less than the most stupendous accomplishment in the history of the world. Is that what we're about to see? I mean, I don't think I'm really that much of a skeptic to say no, it's not what we're about to see. I think that they may claim it. That may happen at some point. And I don't know how I'm going to feel about that. I don't know how all the people are going to feel about that. Like I'm not super happy that I don't see a helicopter chasing a UFO. That would prove essentially it's not a balloon, right? I mean, and they said that happened, Paul and Christian. They said we went in pursuit of a jellyfish UFO in our helicopter. Now, if it did happen, are they saving it for a movie? That's possible, I suppose. But again, if they did indeed, and they would have gotten it on film and not just on any film, they would have gotten movie quality film of this happening. All right. And if that did happen, we're talking, the singularly most important video of all time. They could have delayed it and said, next week, tune in to watch. It might have been the most watched UFO documentary anyway in the history of any documentaries. Everybody would have been talking about it and tuning in. Instead, they're going to go into the psionics. I'm worried about how that's going to, be portrayed with people, the general population. I'm not sure how the psionics aspect of it is going to come off, but no, they didn't bring down the craft. They're not going to. and I would love to be wrong about that. But I want them to show it to us, okay? That's my qualification. I don't want them to say it. I want to see the craft. I want to see them bring it down. And we also got to bring up the ethics of this. Is it even ethical for them to bring it down? Is that what we actually do want, though? Maybe I should adjust what I said. I'm not sure I want them to bring down the craft, because that takes us into some strange, because now they're saying also these things are alive, that these things are sentient. Well, do we still believe are they higher up on their taxonomy than Homo sapiens? And if
Yeah, let's try
so,
it. Yeah.
should we really be aggressively pursuing these things and even talking about bringing them down? They still haven't told us what this dog whistle is.
Yeah, I thought that was super evasive. I was like, really? I mean, can't even give us a little bit of an outline? Like, what is this tech? I mean, is it like some box? Is like you point like a ray gun at it? What is it? So yeah, I agree with all your points though too. Well, what are the ethics behind bringing down a UAP? It's weird how, again, all of these aggressive entities that you're referring to, it is weird how they are all basically shaped like these sea organisms. So if the USO connection is relevant, then it probably has something to do with that too. I mean, just saying. But yeah, I'm kind of leaning on your point too, Dr. Mounts, that I'm not really seeing it happening. But if they do, it's going to be to your other point about the psionics. And I want to get Christian's take about this, because we've talked about this before, about how this is going to pretty much look really bad for the whole psionic people and so forth. These, Christian fundamentalists, I'll say that, right? Those are going to be some of the people that are going to come out now, like you're demon summoning and all this, right? And it's going to get into some dark territory. And that's kind of where I see the perception shifting if something like that does happen, right? So that's the paradigm shift that I think people aren't really ready for. That is a big possibility, in my opinion. I don't know.
I think we lost Christian for a minute here.
Yeah, sorry, my phone was dying there. I had to plug it in. Um, yeah, well, I think, well, I mean, that's the problem with a lot of this stuff, right? Like it bleeds so heavily into like the esoteric. Um, it bleeds I mean, even what we were talking about recently with you last time. I'm just going to call you Doc from now on because I like it. uh, that with the pyramids and what they could possibly represent through some of these studies that have been done by a specific individual. Uh, I think that the thing that we don't realize about kind of our lives and our existence is that history tends to repeat itself, like quite frequently, actually. And I think as far as this is concerned, um, that individuals, uh, they just like you have to be careful about this sort of stuff. You know what I mean? Because you could end up becoming labeled, like you could end up, on the bad end of another Crusades type of situation. Um, especially if something negative happens with any of this stuff, right? It's just I think it's too easy for something bad to occur. And because of how humanity is to kind of blanket terminology something when something bad happens. You see it every day. Like we're seeing history repeat itself every day online already with a lot of this kind of crap and a lot of this thinking. You know what I mean? This type of thinking. Is that like one group of people's bad or another group of people's bad, you know what I mean? Or, because of somebody's belief system, they're bad, like it's just all that. It's a dividing tactic. And like you just have to be careful of that. You have to be mindful of that. And that's kind of where I see some of this stuff heading if you're not extremely careful. And that's what I'll say about that.
What do you think? What do you think, Doc?
Yeah, I mean, I'm torn on it, but I do think that they're going to lose the general population, right? As soon as they start getting into psionics, which that's fine because I'm not saying it doesn't play a role. And I've appreciated from the beginning, like I said, with the Jake Barber egg video with Ross Coulthard, I appreciate how they just went off into the deep end, right? Like they didn't care. They didn't hold back. I didn't mind that. We've seen that with some other whistleblowers that have been part of some documentaries that all of a sudden the producer's like, whoa, wait a minute. I didn't sign up for that part of the story. You know what I mean? Um, and we've seen this play out actually in the history of ufology. It seems quite common for a lot of this stuff to be whitewashed for public perception or not to be portrayed the way it's really happens. It happened with Travis Walton, right? Like they made his encounter much more horrifying than what it was to the real person. Bob Salas, the Malmstrom incident. If you watch that on any documentary, on the History Channel, on YouTube, we're all familiar with the story, right? The UAPs coming in and shutting down the silos and the missiles. But what we don't know is how he's continued to have paranormal experiences ever since then. Bob Salas himself has been abducted by aliens. And a lot of people don't know that because they don't pursue the story any further than just what they've been told, right? Bob Salas said he was abducted by aliens. And not only that, but they experimented on him and forcefully and painfully removed semen from his body. Well, that's definitely not on any of the documentaries, right? So I don't mind them going into the woo aspect, the psionic aspect, but I'm like with you, Paul. I'm kind of like the old Nitsky quote, right? Like, be careful staring into the darkness, or, you might become the darkness. And I do believe in the hitchhiker effect. One thing I became aware of, I had this epiphany last night. Travis Taylor from Skinwalker Ranch, at some point they picked up on these signals and he took that information to the Pentagon and ended up on the UAP task force. My epiphany last night was, and by the way, they didn't want Travis on the Skinwalker Ranch team. He was put there by the History Channel. And now we have this whole entertainment aspect of Skywatcher. Well, I think part of the conflict, I think Travis Taylor took their data. I don't think they knew he was going to do that. I don't think they wanted him to do that. I think he took their data and took it to the authorities. Okay. And this could explain why Skywatcher is being so closely guarded with their data. I was telling some people today because some people have brought up NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, and I actually have a different take on that because some people are like, well, they're not doing with classified data and that sort of thing. But a lot of people don't realize, y'all know from my last time on here, that I was on Beast Games and I had to sign NDAs thick as a Bible. I mean, it covered anything, everything up to my death. If I literally died on that show, my next kin could not sue Amazon. Okay. It literally covered up to my death. When I exited Beast Games, when all of us were eliminated, they searched us. They searched us and our belongings and reminded us that we were under the threat of being sued by Amazon. If I took a hat out, right? Like if I took a hat out, they wanted to know. Meanwhile, they had psychologists waiting on the other side of the facility to counsel us if we needed their help. At the same time as reminding us
That's so
like,
crazy.
I still to right now, like I am still under the NDA. I'm not supposed to say anything negative about the show. You think about that. I'm not supposed to say anything negative about the show on a podcast, for example. Now, just so this notion that there's NDAs and such with the Skywatcher, what's going on, I don't doubt that at all.
Yeah, I agree. Christian, what do you got for us in regards to the conversation, and where do you want to maybe steer the stream?
Well, what do you call it? I appreciate all things what he just said. I think that's important to consider. I think it's important to consider when you're speaking to individuals that could be privileged information but can't share it either. Try not to tear them down so heavily about it as well, because they might not be able to say it under, threat of lawfare. That's a good thing to try to at least keep in your tool belt when you're speaking to individuals about certain things that they can't necessarily share, even though they might want to, right? I think that's a big thing. I think personally, I'd like to maybe go into the direction of the pyramids and maybe a little bit of Malanga and some of that. Like, what do you have any recent updates on anything as far as the pyramids are concerned? I've seen a couple of things that you posted here and there. What's new on that front?
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I mean, I continue to look into it. I still haven't heard back from Malanga or Sokolo, although Jay Anderson did interview a couple of people from the research team. And, I can tie it back into the Skywatcher things and what we were talking about with the psionics and the C5 events. And of course, there was a C5 event this weekend in Wilmington, North Carolina, with Chris Bledsoe at
How do you feel
Wrightsville
about that, by the
Beach.
way? Just for a second, how do you feel about that?
Well, I'll stay
Be
very
honest.
politically correct here, and that I am being honest when I say that I think that on the positive side, it is good anytime we can gather together as humans and fellowship with each other in a joyful, positive way. And I think that getting together and looking at the sky and being in awe of what our own creators, whoever the creator is to each of us, has put in this universe, well, that's a good thing. That's a positive thing, right? And I'm not going to knock it. I think that the same thing happens at Bigfoot festivals. You get together, you meet people, you fellowship, you smile, you laugh, you have a good time, you know. So it's good. I'm fascinated by Chris Bledsoe and his story. I think there's definitely something there. And I think that it connects to all this. I'm not 100% sure how, but I do believe that it does. I'm fascinated by Tim Taylor. I'm fascinated by the Pasulka story, and Chris Bledsoe is tied in with all that. As a matter of fact, there is a direct connection there because who was Tim Taylor and Dana Pasulka out in the desert with? Dr. Gary Nolan. Dr. Gary Nolan, who made a very Luke Skywalker like entrance into the Skywatcher video last night. Okay.
Yeah, he kind of
So
did.
it connects. It connects. There's a definite connection between Nolan and Bledsoe. Now, yeah, there's something there. I think that he can interact with the phenomenon in some sort of way. I think that that's been almost as proven as you can be proven from, you know, the things we know, the photographs he showed us. And I don't mean the photographs of orbs. I mean the photographs with Tim Taylor, photographs with Diana Pasulka, um, photographs with astrophysicists, with people from the military, that sort of thing, right? So there's something there. One theory I've been fascinated with for a while, Paul and Christian, has been the possibility that people are not summoning these orbs or these UFOs, or that they're not calling them with dog whistles, for example, but that they're interfering with them, that they're creating some sort of interference that disrupts their ability to stay hidden from us, and that this is sometimes confused as interaction with them or calling them or summoning them, right? Or them wanting to be seen by us. I think that would explain a lot. And when we go back to what Malanga and his research looked at, you know, I think that he warned us, like Malanga, those folks, they warned us that there is some danger there to be had when we casually interact with something that we know very little about. And I started using this term casual C5. Remember the movie from the 90s, Casual Sex? So I recommended practicing safe C5. I'm not sure exactly how to do that, but because all the stuff I read with Malanga, I'm convinced that people should carefully consider before they engage in casual CE5. That's my take.
I agree with that. We've talked about this before as well, Christian, about protections and kind of preparation and stuff like that. You want to give your take on some of those things that we've talked about before?
Yeah, I could probably get into that a little bit. I think first of all, like, I appreciate, like, I say, I talk to one of the members of the community that I really, really respect. I think Direct is really great about this. He uses what I would call a common sense approach, you know what I mean? And, walk out into the middle of a neighborhood that you've never been before and just kind of say, hey, whoever's out there, you know what I mean? You don't just, because there could be like bad people in the neighborhood. There could be, like pickpockets or thieves or just people that don't have good intentions towards you at all. I think that you have to use common sense, right? It's like you have to make a common sense approach to this, um, because there are many stories of bad things happening. You know what I mean? About like, I mean, I remember a particular, like watching a particular video where I think individuals were pointing lasers at one of these orbs and they lost like the control of their legs. They couldn't use their legs until the orbs left. It was like, like stuff like that. You know what I mean? There are physical effects that come along with the phenomena. Like brain effects. Um, like there is a whole myriad of things. We had Dr. Dan on here. He was outside just looking, took a photograph, and ended up blind for a few days. You know what I mean? With radiation burns. Like that's I wouldn't consider that safe. You know what I mean? Personally, I would say that's probably not a good thing. I think a lot of people probably agree with that. You
Oh
have
yeah.
to be careful. There are people that like, from like say First Nation tribes who are medicine men and medicine women who like study their entire lives, right? To do certain modalities like this, like connecting with the spirit world or anything like that, like their entire lives, training to make contact, if you will. Um, you have to take that kind of stuff into consideration. It's a personal, it's a personal journey. It's a personal risk versus reward type of situation, I think. And there isn't really in my personal opinion, I don't think there's a tried and true method of safe contact. I haven't, if there is, I haven't seen it and I haven't found it personally. So with that being said, I wouldn't recommend going out and doing it. You know what I mean? Because you just don't know. You really don't.
And I'm glad you said that, because you know what, Christian, this ties into a episode of All Things Unexplained, which we've got coming up. I'm very excited about it. It's going to be on the 16th of this month. We're going to dive into this recently viral document that the CIA declassified over 2 decades ago, where they used a remote viewer to look for the Ark of the Covenant. Okay. And we actually have Lynn Buchanan, former military remote viewing expert, coming on to speak with us, plus some religious experts and some others. And what was the Ark of the Covenant? To me, it reminds me a lot about what they're looking for at the pyramids. As I said last time, I fully believe that the evidence shows Malanga and the group, they're looking for a Stargate that can open a portal to another dimension, a dimension where some of these beings are. Okay. Well, the Ark of the Covenant, you mentioned interacting, communicating with them, Christian. The Ark of the Covenant was used as a go-between between humans and the other side, whatever was on the other side. And only certain people were even allowed to use this device, the Ark of the Covenant. It was much too dangerous for the general population. Matter of fact, it seemed to be able, like, it might kill you if you
Right. Well,
used it.
in that document, I think because I skimmed across it myself, that they talked about that there were entities that were actually protecting it as well. Is that there's criteria as far as this is concerned for even approaching this instrument, if that's what you want to classify it as, to be able to do that. And see, that's what I mean, is that there's so many unknowns, right, about a lot of this stuff. Um, and I think that Paul, you asked a really good question, and it's hard because obviously, like, first and foremost, like, you don't recommend making contact at all, right? That's my personal take on it. Um, but for those of you that are out there that really feel like this is something you absolutely must do, uh, like, get yourself some bismuth, I'd say. You know what I mean? Like bismuth, some shungite, um, things that might actually, like, maybe prevent some of these like energies, I guess, from kind of disrupting your energy field, and just make sure that you. I mean, I just personally, I wouldn't do it. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, that's what I was about, like the Ark, right? These entities that evidently, like, protect the Ark, like, they destroy people. They come near them. They just destroy them. That's it. It's like, you want to mess with something like that? You know what I mean? It's like there's some things that I feel like people are just not meant to mess with, and I feel like that's one of them, right? I don't know.
I agree. Yeah, and the reason why I asked is because there's also unwanted contact, right? So I was just kind of more even leaning towards the mental, psychological aspect of it. But the physical effects are real, right? I mean, John Burroughs, according to Jake Barber, he said he had some stuff happen to him as well. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, there's definitely that component of physical harm and so forth. I mean, I don't know if there's even any way of protecting yourself other than running inside your house if you get too close to a craft. Even then, I mean, who knows? But yeah, I mean, I guess I was just kind of alluding to the fact that, if people are going out there with the intention to do that, or if they're not, and somehow something shows up, I think it's always just important to think about, how you would approach that situation, because everybody says they want to see something until they see something, and then it becomes super overwhelming. I mean, I I know that from personal experience where I was like, I thought I did for a while. Whenever I started getting into this topic a little more than like 3 years ago, actually kind of following everything that was up to date till now. And then once I started having sightings, it just became this thing where now I was trying to figure out how to process that, right? So I think that that's a component just to think about. That's all I really have to say about that. But back to the pyramids, back to the pyramids. Let's circle back. You were gonna kind of tie in some of the Malanga stuff to the Skywatcher stuff, is what you were saying?
Well, yeah, this all gets it's very interesting how we talked about this last time too. It always intersects, right? All these things, the spiritual, the paranormal, the quantum realm, the astrophysics, etc. And I mean, I grew up religious too. Malanga had these protocols for disconnecting souls, people from being serially abducted, right? Um, Religious people, they, they're careful to fall on one particular path within the phenomenon, I guess you could say. But yeah, I I just wonder, you know, like, does Skywatcher, do you think they have any theories about what they're encountering out there? If they are getting in touch with something out there, have they put any thought into the implications for that? Have they looked into the research of people like Malanga? I think that, you know, this notion of ancient technologies and new technologies, like what we've talked about, is at CERN. I mean, I think that this dog whistle, I think I have an idea of what it could be. And I'm just guessing that it could, based on some of the things I've dug up in my own research, that it could involve some sort of radiation or nuclear device. I'll give you a little hint. Kevin Knuth laid it out there at one point that a coworker of his, in academics, had invented a handheld nuclear reactor, and that they were essentially going to use it to lure UFOs in. This was approved. It was in production essentially through private funding. Okay. So I do wonder if it's not something along those lines that they're using out there.
I actually agree with that. I think I've even heard Lou Elizondo talk about that too in a couple of interviews, right? He's talked about uh, parts of the program luring them in with nuclear technology, whatever that means. And then we hear a lot of that with the Navy ships, right? With the nuclear engines or whatever they have on there, right? The nukes. So I like that idea. I mean, it sounds probable, especially if these things are attracted to nuclear energy. I mean, I I can totally see that as a possibility. So good point.
Now, what was powering Stargates to be able to open other dimensions? I don't know, but you can't help but wonder, if perhaps that had something to do with being a nuclear device of some sort.
Could be, could be. Christian, what do you think?
As far as I know, man, I don't know. This is a as far as like powering up stargates, like that's a deep that's a that's a we're heading into the realm of like big speculation. I feel like I don't know if like there was like there could have been esoteric means of doing this. I think there was probably like, I mean, it's even like, with contact modalities. I think the human body is a vessel personally, I believe that the human body could represent the portal in a lot of ways, um, and that might be why in a lot of these older civilizations and depictions we do see human sacrifice in regards to possibly like to the gods or to the the portals opening. Yeah, it's pretty. It gets dark real fast with that one. But I think, yeah, personally, that the human body is more or less like the instrument or the tool for that, and that like uh, I'm not so sure really about like the more of like the nuclear side of it more than I am like the esoteric side of it. That's my interpretation of it personally. I think if you look at like Stuart Hameroff's work with consciousness and microtubules, things like that, that consciousness very well could be non-local. It doesn't come from here, and that can be utilized, can be manipulated. Um, and I think that when we see like these older depictions of these things where stargates were being utilized, that the human body was the resource for that. That's my take on it, personally, from like an esoteric type of background.
That's kind of what Dr. Mounts was saying in a way, right? With are these psionics aware of the precautions behind this, right? I mean, yeah, I can really see that too as a concern.
Well, and one thing we should keep in mind too, like if we put any stock into what Skywatcher's doing out there and what they're turning up, we have to take a couple things into account. One thing to take into account is, again, something Kevin Knuth told us, that in terms of where these things are coming from, all signs point towards they're coming from here. They're either already here or they're slipping in from another dimension. And of course, this is what Malanga said in his pyramid research. He believes that these beings are coming from another dimension. We might even call it subatomic dimensions. Well, if we look at what's happening out at Skywatcher, and if we believe what they're saying, then they're encountering these things. They even said it. They're encountering these things on a daily basis, sometimes multiple ones at the same time. This essentially eliminates the possibility that they are somehow rapidly arriving from different parts of the cosmos, right? That is just simply not the case. It's not the case. They mention that these things are anomalous and that they're defying the laws of physics. And one thing we know about the universe is kind of like what I said last time, right? Like proving something is extraterrestrial when the entire universe is made up of the same elements and even the same isotopes, right? So we need to understand that when we do say something like this is defying the laws of physics, well, that's kind of the same thing as being from another dimension. So I think there are some parallels here between Malanga's work and what we're seeing in modern day ufology with things like the Skywatcher.
Great point. I'm just I have so many questions, right? Like if they're from here, where are they coming from, right? I mean, they seem to have that screen threw it up in the chat earlier about the transmedium qualities of some of these UFOs or UAPs. So I'm just wondering, I mean, what's the data behind that, right? There's a lot of open-ended questions is kind of the thing in terms of, again, where these UFOs are coming from. I would like to know that, at least that, because again, origin and all that stuff, I don't think we're ever going to get that. I don't. But if they can track where they're coming from, I don't know. Maybe that might go a long way. It's
Paul, I
hard,
think,
man.
yeah, I think like the best resource that we have is ancient culture and the oral tradition. I think that is where a lot of our answers do lie. Like, I was recently talking to another member we had on before, Sarah, about the Picts, like the Pictish people, and then what do you call it? The people in Ireland who, descended from the clouds, like Danu, like all of these people and like the land of Tirnanog within the sea, like in the people that where people go who never age, like in the ocean, and they come to land. Like this is, I feel like there's a lot that's in the ancient lore and tradition where a lot of our answers probably do lie. We just don't really pay them much mind, or, can, fluff them off as fantasy or fairy tale or stories of grandeur. But I think that, even with experiencers, I think that there's a like there might be a genetic link there to these like civilizations, right, that existed before that, could still be around. We just don't see them, or we don't have access to them. I think that there's a big piece of the puzzle there. Um, and a lot of people that like are experiencers, I always try to tell them, you know what I mean, like find out who your ancestors are and where you come from, because that might give you an answer to, what you're interacting with. Truly, I feel like it's our best resource, honestly.
So you're saying that these native cultures and all these ancient texts and I guess you can say anecdotal data in a sense, right? Correlated to some of these entities. You're saying that maybe there's a connection there of the same phenomena that we're seeing, and that maybe we can make those connections to serve at least a little bit of the answers. But here's my question. What's the level of credence that we should give to older or ancient testimony like that, right? I mean, we weren't there, right? So if they're saying, well, they came from the sea and all this stuff, I mean, you kind of get what I mean with that. Like, what's the level of credence that we're supposed to have with that then, if that's the case? I mean, I guess it is a leap of faith in a sense.
Right, yeah, well, it is true. It's obviously a lot of it's not based in science, right? So it's hard to really quantify from that perspective. But I think that if you're willing to try to take an analytical look at it, right, and try to maybe interpret some of these older stories, um, is maybe a little bit less like fictitious and more in the realm of possibility, that you could maybe strike a balance between those two, right? In your own personal discernment, because obviously it's always your own discernment in the end about all of this stuff. But that's what I try to recommend to experiencers who are experiencing the phenomena, right? Maybe invasively or non-invasively is, I always try to say, figure out where your lineage hails from, because it seems like it connects in that fashion. Um, you know, that's that's kind of what I've seen, right? You know what I mean, from experiencers that have come in, that are like we're connected to like a lot of like it's ancient tradition. You know what I mean? That really seems to come through in a lot of this stuff. And I think that the key to our like how we got here lies in our past, which I feel like we obviously don't get. We don't get the full picture of the past, right? So um, it really depends on, like, say, listening to your grandma's stories, or you know that oral tradition, and kind of the ways of the your ancestors who came before you. I feel like a lot of answers lie in that. At least I've seen with other people that have happened personally.
What do you think about that, Dr. Mounts? Is there any credence to the ancient correlation of UAP? to the modern version of that?
Absolutely. And I was just thinking about this in terms of how Malanga viewed it and how the Skywatchers viewed it and ancient peoples. And when I say ancient peoples, I'm going to take it back to ancient religious peoples. Okay. And I grew up religious, but now let's think about the ancient people. And I was actually just thinking about one of my favorite Bible verses. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Okay. Ancient people learned at some point to connect with a higher authority through the power of prayer. What did this power of prayer look like? Look like quiet people in meditation, perhaps, eyes closed, concentrating, speaking to themselves, maybe talking to an otherworldly presence that they believed was guiding them in their lives to a better place. They used the power of prayer to not only communicate with their God, but to enrich their own lives, right? Ancient Egypt, whoever was around during the pyramids, maybe they were using the pyramid as a go-between to connect their souls to some otherworldly power. These ancient people praying, they were doing nothing short of connecting their soul, and we know that the soul was a driving force and the reason they prayed too, right? Like, forgive us of our sins, keep us out of hell, take us to heaven. And by take us to heaven, we're keep us out of hell, we're talking about our souls, right? Nothing less than our souls. I can't help but wonder next week when episode 3 comes out, or next month, whenever, and we see a psionic team, is it going to look a lot like people in prayer? Because I think it might. And when these folks are connecting psionically, might this just be another way of saying they're connecting with their souls? Are they not reaching out on some higher level, higher plane than their normal existence? Mentally, psionically, telepathically, however you want to put it, with an otherworldly presence? That seems to me to be exactly what they're doing. Like Christian was saying earlier, let's just hope they are prepared for who they're talking to.
That's a great point. It's a great point. I agree. Did you have anything else? I do see you had a clip down here.
Oh yeah, that was just a little jellyfish primer there. If y'all wanted to watch it, it's just I think it's 3 minutes long. If you wanted to check it out, it's literally
let's do it.
everything there is about the jellyfish.
Let's do it.
The class 7 is the jellyfish. I would say the most significant encounter that I've had here was probably interacting with the jellyfish.
Every day, we've identified some form of jellyfish UAP.
They're actually probing as to
Looks like it's not
validate
going
our
to
capabilities. If
glitchiness.
this is an advanced
Maybe it is.
species and is smart enough to do what it's doing,
It's a little glitchy, huh?
Yeah, we
Yeah,
can.
it's lagging a bit for me.
They have the upper hand.
It's probably 4,000 feet above us. About
Yeah, we could skip that if we need to. But yeah, essentially,
maybe
it's
1
just
kilometer out, horizontal distance above the ground, and it looked like.
Yeah, I don't
yeah,
know if
it's a
that one's gonna
recap
work
of
right now.
everything that
Um,
they said about the jellyfish. So, I just think that the jellyfish was the one they really made some fantastical claims about, and I'm really hoping they deliver some fantastic evidence.
oh yeah, totally. Well, gentlemen, do we have any other topics that we should hit on for the
I
night?
did
What do
see
you think?
Arden had a question for me somewhere in the
Yeah.
chat.
Where was that? I think it was a while back, huh?
At 12:01.
Oh, here we go, right? Where is it? I don't see it. What did she ask you? Do you see it?
Yeah, she said, all things, do you think any of this will bring us closer to disclosure in your opinion? I think that we could probably all address that. And I think that, yes, I think some of this will bring us closer, but maybe not the parts we're talking about tonight. I think that I'm not sure if Skywatcher is going to bring us closer to disclosure. I'm not sure if the pyramid story is going to bring us closer to disclosure. But I do think that the possibility still exists that there are other entities that are going to bring us closer to disclosure. Entities like SETI, for one. These entities aren't really on podcasts very often, probably because they're too busy working and not putting out a lot of documentaries and that sort of thing. Although maybe they should, it would probably be interesting. But SETI was an entity brought up to us more than once by Nick Pope. Nick Pope brought up SETI and their protocols offline to us and was like, hint, hint, check out SETI. He also said, hint, hint, check out this paper. And there's a paper out there that's talking about how they're using AI to reanalyze years worth of old SETI data and the signals, right, that SETI was picking up. And it has picked out at least one signal that it identifies as, yeah, there's something unusual there. Okay. Nick Pope pointed out that paper to us, and he made sure that we understood that within the SETI protocols, it plainly lays out that should they discover evidence of extraterrestrial life or NHI, that they will disseminate that information to the public and to scientists worldwide and even to the UN. That's in their protocols, that they will immediately do that. I've heard people say that that's in the Skywatcher protocol somewhere, that I think what they really remember is they claimed that they were going to be fully transparent. Well, that might look different to different people, right? But that's why you take a private entity like SETI, and SETI realized at some point that they had to have it in writing, that if their mission actually were to be fulfilled, if they were to actually encounter a legitimate extraterrestrial experience, that they would have to have it in their protocols for how to deal with it, for how to disseminate that information to the public and what they were going to do, what that would look like, right? So they've been through mock-ups of this sort of thing. People like Nick Pope have written mock-ups of what disclosure would look like upon the discovery of such evidence. So I do think that there's hope out there. I'm just not sure that it's going to come from the History Channel, for example.
Great point. And I didn't even know that about SETI, to be honest. So that I learned something new today. Christian, what do you got for any last closing words before we close out for tonight?
Yeah, I would just say with in regards to Arden's question, I think I always say that it's up to the experiencers, you know what I mean? Disclosure, and each individual person. It's not just Skywatcher's responsibility. Yeah, exactly. There you go. John says it right there. It's up to the individuals and experiencers. They do. And sometimes it sounds like sometimes some of these stories sound like absolutely out of this universe, no pun intended. That like, but there's answers there. And, in regards to Skywatcher, I think it's good because it gets more eyes, more people looking at specific avenues of disclosure. I think that that's important. You know what I mean? As far as us kind of getting closer to the truth, as far as the situation's concerned. So overall, yeah, I think that that's the good thing, right? The more people that are looking at the topic, the more people that are, seeing it in an organized manner, in a scientific manner as well. I think that's extremely important. It has to come from a grounded perspective, or else you'll lose a lot of people, just like Doc was saying there. So I think always use your discernment, as always. Like, trust your gut. You know what I mean about whatever you're seeing in the sky, about what you're looking at online. You know what I mean? And don't be afraid to just say, I've had enough of it as well, and put it down if you need to as well. Because a lot of this stuff can be ontological. Take care of yourself first about it. And great show tonight, Paul. Appreciate it. Thank you so much, Doc, for being here as well, brother. Awesome as always.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, Christian.
Yeah, I agree with everything you both said. And yeah, this was a fun stream tonight. I really appreciate Dr. Mounts coming in here last minute again, just to kind of mix it up and go over some of the Skywatcher stuff, the state of ufology. We kind of tied it back into some of the pyramid conversation we had last time, the connection between UFOs and ancient civilization. So we hit all the bases tonight. So yeah, really fun. Also, everybody, don't forget to give All Things Unexplained a follow on all his platforms, along with subscribe to his YouTube channel. He is doing good work out there. And as well, same for the Portal Room. Make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. So yeah, without further ado, everybody have a good rest of your week. And again, thank you so much. Have a good night.